Good morning, YouTubers. It's your buddy Choppadong. I am back with a hyper simple breakdown and a couple of announcements from DFSArmy.com, your one-stop shop for all things DFS related: NBA, MLB, PGA, MMA. We have you covered from top to bottom, all sports, content, tools, and coaching to make you a better player. Of course, the link is down there at the bottom in the description, dfsarmy.com. Use coupon code CHOP, C-H-O-P. Trigger the 20% off discount, and really and truly just give yourself a shot at becoming a better player by using some of our expertise and some of our discussion to tip you off the plays that you might not know. There were a ton of NASCAR plays this weekend. There were a ton of golf plays this weekend that really worked out for our members. And of course, baseball, WNBA, NBA, NHL even are still rocking and rolling as those seasons either get into their peak or start to wind down, whichever sport it is that you play. I wanted to make a couple of quick announcements. There's something really fun that we're doing inside DFS Army right now. It's in its infancy. If you wanted to partake, certainly click the link, become a member, and hop in here and start playing along with us, because we go through, and I'll show you some of the winners here in a second. What I'm leading up to is a more or less a growth league, or I'm calling it a learning league, where a bunch of us are teaming up together and we're going to go through our lineups and we're going to try to build the best lineups that we can based on the league that we're in, not to win massive GPPs. That's not the idea. The idea is, let's take a look at where your lineup typically finishes. And we're just doing this in a free league for fun. And we're going to do it on DraftKings this week. We'll do it on FanDuel next week and flip-flop back and forth. But where does your lineup typically finish? Are you getting into the top half? If not, why? Are you getting into the top half of the league most often? If so, you should be playing some 50-50s, head-to-heads, double-up type contests. Are you getting into the top third? If you're getting into the top third relatively regularly, a couple of times a week, you should be in triple ups, 10-man leagues, things like that, 3-man leagues, those types of contests with a large portion of your play, because you will be most rewarded for hitting that higher level. Are you getting into the top 10%? Are you getting into the top 1%? If so, you should be in larger leagues and possibly into GPPs. The problem with the actual GPPs is you've got to get way inside the top 1% typically before you really start unlocking the money. You get to the top 1%, that's great. You're going to get somewhere between 6 and 8 times your money back. You put in $2, you'll get somewhere around, $15 or something like that. And that's great. But that's still not going to make up for the times that you miss unless you get way beyond that and really start unlocking the big money. So the bulk of your play should be down in the leagues and the 50-50s and things like that, where you are hitting those more often. Even though you're producing that top 1% lineup, you should still be carrying the bulk of your play down in those contests that are easier to win, because that's where you're going to consistently grind up a bankroll that will allow you to either move up in buying levels or start taking more and more shots at more and more contests and start compounding that winning. So that's what we're trying to assess with our members in these leagues, is if you're struggling with DFS MLB, jump in, and the next morning we'll start reviewing back and forth. We'll answer questions back and forth, and we'll see if we can't guide the ship to a better place. Not all of these lineups have to be built my way. I'm going to show you that in the hyper simple breakdown, but we're focusing on smaller slates where we can all pretty much see the same plays. We're going to boost everybody's confidence, and we're going to start showing you where you should be allocating your contest, where you should be allocating your play to maximize your own personal rate of return, because it's different for everybody. And if you're one of those people that just finds out that you just aren't a profitable baseball player, then go play another sport. Or play just the 50-50s, because if you've got no realistic shot at winning those leagues because you're either just not making the right decisions or you're working on a research process or whatever, then don't get into those contests that are sucking you dry until it's time. And that's what we're going to talk to you about. So contemplate it, jump in, become a VIP. This is one of the areas that we're going to focus on. The other one is community. You always hear me talking about it out there on Twitter. We've got a lot of winners in here over the past day or so. A couple of them that are big winners. A couple of them, there's no win that's too small. We'll celebrate a $2 or $5 double up with shout outs just like we will a $1,000 winner, but we will show the guy's winning $1,500 here, $1,000 here. These guys are pumped up and they deserve the shout out. Then there's a little bit of scheduling stuff. I mean, we've got everything from PGA, WNBA, NASCAR, MMA as a card this week, NHL, NBA, MLB, with the releasing of the coaches and the schedule of articles that are coming out today. If you've seen me do a little bit of my 200 on 200, I'll walk you through that a little bit today here in a second too. Look at this massive NASCAR montage. NASCAR is our most dominant sport. If you're not in here and playing it, you're missing out. A lot of people will use NASCAR to build a bankroll for NFL next year. That's just a large way of how we play. If you're making money on these other sports, pile that money up and then use it for your other sports to take shots at tournaments, and maybe you get lucky and play the sport that you love most or whatever. There's a lot of different ways to skin a cat around here, and this is what our coaches help you identify. Just wanted to show you how that works. The link to the article or the contest is actually in here. It's a private link for VIPs only to get into our Learning League. And that's what I want you guys to do when you guys come inside, is jump in there. It's like 25 people, first come, first serve. Like I said, it's a free league, and we're going to discuss the plays at the end of the day. If you haven't ever found me, I'm out here on Twitter all the time. I'm tweeting a lot of our content, our free content, in an effort to give back to the community. But of course, I'm talking a little bit about some stats, a little bit about some fun stuff. Like last night, I was chirping my St. Louis Blues as they were getting their butts whipped by Boston. So you Boston fans can relish in the fact that you've got us in game one, but we're coming in hot on Wednesday. And hopefully we'll play a full 60 minutes and give you guys a little bit of hell. We've got 2 preview articles already up at DFS Army right now. Up North's PGA preview is phenomenal. It runs through all sorts of cash plays, course breakdowns, statistics that you should be watching, and then he comes back later with a VIP article, Chalk Donkey, which talks in a lot more specifics about where his strategies are and where we should be playing for the week. Schnarr's Super Picks is another one that focuses a little bit on cash in the beginning, and it evolves throughout the week with some interesting plays and a cash game review of what worked and what didn't work the previous week and how we're going to learn from it. So 2 educational pieces that do a very, very good job with PGA. I recommend you give those a read. In fact, you can see out on Facebook on a small community page that we have out there, it's already been liked a few times. People are reading it. People enjoy it. Definitely an article worth your time. But of course, let's dive in. Let's talk a little bit about the hyper simple 4-game slate that we're going to be talking about inside DFS Army today. Everybody's going to run out to the 13-game main. I think that's stupid. If you're not dominating MLB as a player, I think you should be processing information you can handle, keeping the slate a little bit smaller. When you get a little bit smaller, you can also start thinking about some contrarian plays where maybe you don't want to use this pitcher, maybe you don't want to use this particular offense. Because what you're trying to do is you're trying to leverage the field. This is where you can learn this, because the mistakes, if you go away from, say, Houston and go towards a different offense, then the other offenses, there just are not many other choices. So a lot of times you have to pick from a crappier offense, not on this slate, but you have to pick from a crappier offense, and it winds up being right. And it starts to show you how going away from the grain can really, really help. But on these smaller slates, when there's actual chalk, actual high ownership, everybody gravitates towards that because it's a safe play, and that opens up all of the other contrarian options for you to pick from. And the chalk fails in baseball like crazy. So you're going to always have a shot. You're always going to be live. These are strategies we talk about inside DFS Army. So if we're looking today at our pitchers, you can see Brad Keller, John Lester, Giolito, Senzatella. I didn't look at some of these guys' names, and it's very, very interesting because I sorted by K-score or by the pitcher's actual strikeout upside. K-score is a metric that adds the pitching strikeout upside of the pitcher to the strikeout percentage of the opponent. And we're looking for high numbers in both places. Pitchers that strike people out a ton going up against teams that strike out a ton themselves. And when we find that matchup, it's like a double green light. And there really isn't one on this slate today. You can tell by the K-scores. I look for a number over 500, and there's nothing even close. Now, I looked at some different sources, came up with some different sample sizes, and nothing is too crazy. But if what I look at is the combination of K-score, Vegas odds, and price. And I use my little cheat sheet for that this is my own personal, I don't even usually drop it in the forums anymore, but it's something anybody can do. You write down the pitcher, you write down their salary, you write down their Vegas odds, you write down their K-score and their matchup, and you just start looking at them from a helicopter view. Okay, so Giolito had the highest K-score himself, personally, not KC included, but just himself. But add in KC and he's got a 504. by the sample size I looked at. Perez 485, Martin 430, Lester 406. It drops off really quick today. But we're looking at some modest priced pitchers and then some cheap pitchers. I want to stick with the Vegas favorites here. On a slate like this, when I look at this type of crud, and this is horrible, but when I look at this type of junk, then I'm going to lean a little bit more on Vegas odds. And I can't find much. I can only find a 140. So again, it's a crapshoot again. Now I'm going to lean towards price, and I'll probably just pay down and take my chances. Am I going to pay down in both spots? I don't know. Giolito's okay. I hope he doesn't get lit up by KC, but 10,000 is a lot to ask. Perez going against Milwaukee. I don't really want to attack Milwaukee. I don't really want to attack the Cubs. I certainly don't want to attack Houston. So it's just not going to be a very easy slate to pick pitchers on. Nobody on the main slate is going to be using any of these guys probably, but when we're stuck with just these 4 games to pick from, we have to dip into the crap. And they're all wide open. I'm not going to fault anybody for any pitcher. If you see something like, well, his home run per 9 is really low, or his walk rate's really low, his ground ball rate's really high, whatever. You could look at a whole bunch of different stuff today. But the bottom line is what I'm trying to tell you is you're basically sifting through a pile of turd to look for that one little diamond ring in there, and you're only gonna find the diamond ring if you get a little bit lucky today. And your hands are just going to come out smelly no matter how much you dig. So I just tend to keep it very, very basic, very, very hyper simple, and I just say K-score, Vegas odds, and price. And it looks like price is going to be king today. So Martin might be in play. Close my eyes, throw the dart, maybe some Perez, maybe mix in a little Giolito. I don't know, but I'm going to be down here on the lower end of the price points and just sort of taking my chances here. 6,000 probably can't go all the way to Keller unless I can see that he's going to pitch a lot of innings. Lester looks a little bit higher on the pricing chair. Lester Giolito looks good. Senzatella in Colorado, I don't know. Merrill Kelly in Colorado, I don't know. Probably not smart. But if we need the money, we need the money. So again, you can just see the pile of junk that you're just sifting through to get there. Okay. Now, what does that mean for the pitchers? I mean, the one thing that you can do to turn against the pitchers is you can take this Sierra number, sort by, ascending order. It's actually sort by descending. Push all those high Sierras to the top, and these are the pitchers we should be likely stacking against. Merrill Kelly has a high Sierra, and he's in Coors. Martin Perez may be a pitcher that we use. If we're not using him, you could stack against him. You could stack against Giolito. You could stack against Keller. Arizona and Colorado should be popular tonight. Your opponent in Colorado, and well, Keller's got Chicago White Sox, so maybe not so Arizona. These are the teams that I'd be focused on looking at for bats. So Colorado, Minnesota, Kansas City, they get the first couple of check marks. Another thing that I have done, Colorado, Minnesota, I'm going to write these out. I'm doing this with you. Colorado, Milwaukee, Kansas City. Kansas City, Milwaukee, Colorado. Fine. Got yourself a little bit of a game plan. Another thing that I can do is I can go into Notorious's first look article, and I can scroll down here and look for the offenses, the 8 o'clock offenses that are having trouble. Oh, having trouble. My goodness. So Colorado, you got a 378 against lefties and a 380 against righties for Merrill Kelly. He struggles with both sides of the plate. That puts Colorado in an even better spot. Arizona is in a solid spot. Houston, of course, is in a solid spot. And the White Sox against Brad Keller in a solid spot. So when I look at these numbers, if you want to take Cubs right-handers, go for it. You can see that Martin's struggles against righties. So I'm going to use these numbers and check boxes. And right now I had originally KC, Milwaukee, and Colorado underlined. Now I went back and I circled Chicago White Sox, Houston, Arizona, Colorado. So Colorado's underlined and circled. Colorado's got 2 checks right now. 2 things going for them. If you wanted to use something like IRT, implied run total, you certainly could. But another thing that I like to use, let's see if I can find it. Is it this one? Nope. That's my edit sheet. It's the NHL sheet here. It's the old NHL sheet. What I did in NHL was I would look at teams that were scoring runs going up against teams that were allowing runs or goals in hockey's case, and I would start to compile what team is scoring a lot of runs, what team is giving up a lot of runs or goals, sorry, and then how do they match up? Again, broad scale, kind of like K score. High strikeouts, high team strikeouts go together to make a double green light. Well, if I have a team that scores a lot of runs, like Minnesota here, number one, don't mind the colors. They're a little off from the hockey stuff. We'll get it right. And Chicago, in the last 2 weeks, Minnesota scored the most runs in baseball. Chicago scored the fourth most runs. Those are the best two offenses on this slate. Yes, it changes dramatically from pitcher to pitcher. I get that. But it's just a macro view, team view. We can then look at their opponents and see how many runs they are allowing. When I see KC 9th, 20th and 24th is actually pretty good. 26th, 27th is pretty good. Those teams are pitching well right now. You might not want to go up against them. But if I can add these two together, like 1 and then the opponent's runs allowed is a 20, add that together and I get a 21 for Minnesota. I can start looking here for the low numbers because it's going to pit a 1 against a 1, which perfect score would be 2, right? 30 and 30, worst offense in baseball, going up against the best pitching would be 30 and 30 of the worst possible score of 60. So the best score is a 2, the worst score is a 60. The lower the better. So where are the low numbers on this slate? There aren't a lot of super low numbers. The best we have is Arizona and Minnesota. So it might be nice, it might be smart to take a look at Minnesota tonight because they're scoring runs and they're going up against Milwaukee, who's been allowing some runs against. Not a lot because the rank of 20 is pretty darn good. So this chart isn't looking great today, but we've already identified that the slate's pretty crappy to begin with. It's going to be pretty wide open. And what this is starting to tell me is I might just want to just sort and not even stack teams. I might try to guess which team's going to go off, but I might try to get pieces of 3 teams that are in good spots. A little Milwaukee, a little Kansas City, a little Arizona, a little Houston, a little Colorado, whatever, because there is no real definitive path showing up right now. So when I'm trying to find bats and it's going to be difficult, I can go by 2 methods and then we'll wrap it up and we'll kick you out of here. But the first method, hang on, let me go get my door. Man, do I apologize for that. I'm obviously not in a soundproof booth and you got my dog barking at the FedEx guy. Anyhow, what we're going to try and do by determining the batter's method here is we're going to look at the overall page. We're going to kick down to the 8 o'clock slate with the 4 games. And we're going to scroll over here to the ISO. This is what I'm calling 200 on 200. My VIPs get this information well, you're going to get it in article form, but it's going to get locked up and be VIP only fairly soon because the article is too popular right now. I'm going to sort in this tool. I'm going to sort by the starting pitcher's ISO allowed. And I'm going to see that versus right-handed bats, Corbin Martin gives up a 417 ISO against. That's a lot. That may be a small sample. Maybe he hasn't pitched a ton of innings yet, but initially he's giving up a lot of power. So I'm going to look, what is elite? If you go to Fangraphs and you define it, elite ISO is 200 or better. So this is like double elite. This is insane. It's not elite for the pitcher. It's elite for the bats. And so we're going to also look over here and go green light, green light. The bats over here, the 215, anyone over a 200, and this is over a 2-year sample size, so it's a steady number. Chris Bryant, Javi Baez, borderline is Contreras. So these are the guys that I would be including in my stacks. Bryant and Baez, I'd try to get them in there. They're facing the worst ISO pitcher on the slate, and they have high ISOs themselves. So when I see strong power bats going up against a pitcher that gives up a lot of power, that's a double green light and something that I want to be focused on. Is it going to work every day? No. But it has better odds of working today than any other matchup out there. And it probably still won't work 40% of the time, but it's been pretty good at identifying guys that are hitting home runs. It's been a decent home run predictor, just in this one metric alone. I come down here to the 226, that's also over a 200. And I would look, what is this, right-handers from Arizona. So Merrill Kelly struggles against right-handed bats. Right-handers in Colorado, sorry, this is Arizona's pitcher. So What I'm going to look for is right-handed bats in Colorado that hit for high ISO. And I immediately find Nolan Arenado, shocker, right? Trevor Story, another shocker. 237, Mark Reynolds. 229, Chris Iannetta. If they get the starts, they're not in the starting lineup yet. Lineup hadn't been released. But if they do land in the starting lineup, I'm going to want them in my lineup because they're cheap. And they're power on power. And then a little bit of weaker sauce down in here. Now you want one that's close. You come down to the 194, and it's Senzatella, so there's your Arizona righties. So I would look at the power in there. Christian Walker, probably a one-off. And you can just sort down this list looking for the high ISO pitchers going against the high ISO bats. The other thing that I do, if you know, is I go to L7 WOBA. This is my go-to metric. Take that and sort that by, and this is how I might find most of my bats today. And I can do this in a couple of different ways. While I turn these games on and narrow down to just the games that I want to play today, I can look at who's the best on the slate because we know all of the pitching across the board is pretty terrible. And I might be focused on somebody start Max Kepler, Anthony Rizzo, there's Arenado again. When I start seeing the same name in multiple facets, Colorado is underlined and circled. Arenado has a 230-something ISO against a pitcher giving up a 400 ISO. He is hot right now with a 585 WOB over his last week, 480 over his last 2 weeks. This is probably the play of the slate. Should probably be chalk. If you go against him, this is another thing. In our small league, you should probably have some Nolan Arenado because he's got the best possible combination, it looks like, of floor and upside on the slate right now. In a league of 20 people, you just don't need to get away from the chalk. Now, you start playing 100-man, 1,000-man, 5,000-man tournaments, you're going to maybe contemplate, let's hope he has a bad night. Because if I pivot off of him, won't be able to afford both him and Rizzo, and I pivot off of him and Rizzo has the night, or Kepler has the night, and I can get one or the other in my lineup, or Trevor Story, then I'm probably sitting pretty if they hit the home run and Arenado goes 0 for 4. That's how you start using that leverage or using it. But in a cash game where you only need to beat half of the world, play what everybody else is playing because you'll be different in enough key spots to make the difference and you'll get right up there with everybody else because the bulk of everybody's going to be in about the same place. I hope that makes sense. You're just trying to eke just past the meat of the bell curve. You're not trying to win the thing. In a GPP, you got to get way inside that top 1%. In a 50-50, you just need to finish 49th out of 100 people. Because there's no more reward for doing better. It's the same, if you put in $1, it's the same $2 winner no matter where you finish. So you might run through something like this. You're not thinking about ownership anymore in these cash games, in these small leagues. You're thinking about the best play possible. If it stacks a lineup, it stacks a lineup. If it doesn't, it doesn't. If it takes a batter against my pitcher, it takes a batter against my pitcher. Well, why am I thinking like that? Because I just don't need much to beat these people, and the majority of the time, they're going to overthink themselves. Look at how overcomplicated you yourself make baseball right now. You're looking at this number and that number and this number and that number. You listen to all these different opinions and all these different, and you go crazy on spinning around in your head. No, 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 no. Cut it down to the most simple. Pick the best pitcher on the slate and find a method by which you can identify him quickly. Pick the best bats on the slate and find a method by which you can identify them quickly. That's all I'm doing. That's all I'm doing. And I'm going to look down here. Let's say I wanted to do the DK style and go position by position. Because I need a catcher, not catcher and first base like FanDuel, just a straight up catcher. Who's the best catcher on the slate? Well, it might be Yasmani Grandal. If I wanted a cheap guy, it might be Maldonado. He's hitting a 451 WOB over the last week. He's hitting the ball pretty well for cheap, $2,600. Chris Iannetta, if he makes the starting lineup, we already saw, is an ISO on ISO, a 200 on 200 candidate. John Ryan Murphy, if he makes that, these guys are getting down under 380. I'm not a big fan of going under 380 to 400. Because that's about 900 OPS, which is on base plus slug. It's about the same damn difference. So these would be the top 2 or 3 guys. Maldonado is going to be key on my list because he's a value bat. Now, if I don't need value, I might upgrade to Grandal. I might upgrade to Iannetta. And then start forming some form of a Colorado stack. That's okay. But the first thing I'm going to do is the bottom-up building. If you haven't seen me do that for a while, maybe we'll do a video this week. I start with the least objectionable player. In this case, it'd be Maldonado, and I just plug him in. And at the end of my lineup, I've got $9,000 left over to upgrade, and I start going through and I start upgrading. I can upgrade them all a little bit, or upgrade kind of stars and scrubs, and drop one of the punt plays and take a Ionetta or a Arenado or something like that that's higher priced, and chew up the money that way with 2 or 3 players. It all depends on how you want to build. First base, I'd be looking at Rizzo. Where's my value at first base? Down here, Tyler White and Yuri Gurriel. They're not hitting for crap, so I'm probably going to have to pay up at first base, and that may cost me Arenado. Second base, 3,300 is Hira. 392 is not terrible. But if Luis Arias, whatever, gets the start, that's where I'm going. This isn't rocket science, guys. This is why I call this a hyper simple method. Arias is hitting well right now. I'm going to try to ride the train. He's cheap, and I need the money at a couple of positions. This is one spot I'll be looking. Third base, Arenado's going to be top of the list. He's damned expensive. 4,700 for Sano isn't terrible. Chris Bryant, we saw, is another power-on-power indicator. Bodie's hitting pretty well. So if you want to get a little contrarian and go against the Bryants and the Arenados and the Moustakas and go with the David Bodie, that's probably fine. It's a little contrarian for this slate. Probably not necessary unless you're going higher in the pitching, prices or whatever. Probably not necessary for our 4-game slate, our league tonight, because we're not trying to win a GPP with it. You're trying to assemble the best combination of salary and production that you can possibly put together. But look who's down the list. Bregman, Dozier, Escobar. These guys are all down the list. They're not as good a plays. They're not hitting the ball as well. Now, they might have a big night tonight. I don't know. But right now, they're not trending up. They're not trending hot. So I want guys that are trending hot. Pretty simple. Come over here to shortstop. Trevor Story's going to be top of the list. If I wanted Story and Arenado in there together, then I'd have to use a Contreras and probably a Hura or somebody like that. Hope these aren't interrupting my speech. When they pop in there, sometimes they do. But you get the theme. You get the idea. I'm looking for the hotter bats possible, and I'm looking for a little bit of price if I can find it. I wouldn't take Arenado or Ahmed over Story unless I was stacking Arizona and wanted to kind of compile that together. Sorry, I forgot to turn notifications off when I did this video. So yeah, outfield. Outfield's typically your deepest spot. Let's see if we can find some hotter guys that are getting some plate appearances. See, LeCastro, not so much, 11 plate appearances. If he starts, I'd be looking at him. Man, is he expensive. Jeepers. Never mind. But I'm looking down here, Almora. Almora's running fairly hot, 428 over the last week. And at 4,000, he's pretty cheap, 3,700, 3,800. Getting down here, Reddick and Hayward are probably usable. Nobody dirt cheap. Tilson, Billy Hamilton, they're not getting on base. They're not hitting very well, but they are cheap. I probably would use Maldonado and Hira and Arias or whatever before these guys and see where that puts me. And tonight, I'm not going to be afraid to go dirt cheap on pitching and just roll the dice. That's where I'm going to save a ton of my money. And I'm going to hope it works out. I don't think tonight is very predictable on this slate. So it's a great GPP type of lineup because if you hit it right, you might hit it really in a funky way. When we're doing our own league lineups, I would tend to either pick one offense and hit it really hard, or I would tend to kind of take a bunch of little 2 stacks and mini stacks and spread out. I still don't know where I'm going to go exactly on the pitching, but I'm probably paying down. So I know it's 30 minutes, but this is a lot to cover. Hopefully you get a lot out of this. You like and subscribe the video. You put a little comment in there or such. You consider becoming a VIP, jumping into our Learning League, because our Learning League is absolutely going to make people better players. Those of you that are already struggling, get in here, start playing with us, get into the coaching rooms and the discussion and start talking back and forth with us. We will help your game out. We will discuss our own plays. We'll discuss your plays. We'll come up with some form of a consensus decision on what the good and bad plays were, but we're also going to realize that even the situation that Nolan Arenado is in tonight, he's using a round bat to hit a round ball, and if he's 1 grain of wood in that bat off, it is a pop fly to the outfield. If he hits it dead square, it's a home run. Could go 4 for 4 with 4 bombs, could go 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts. He could do anything in between. We don't know. What we do know is, as hot as he is right now, and the pitcher that he's facing giving up the power to that side of the plate, as well as the spot that Colorado is in general right now, as well as with their ballpark, he's in as good a spot as it gets. No guarantee he's going to have a great night, but he's in as good a spot as it gets. If we played this exact game 100 times, he would have a lot of good games. You don't know what's going to happen tonight. You might catch one of the bad ones. It's kind of like when you're sitting on, 18 at the blackjack table, and yeah, it's possible you're going to get the 2. Most of the time you're going to go over 21, but every once in a while you get that 2. I guess that'd be the reverse, because every once in a while Nolan Arenado is going to go over 4 tonight. Ring that little notification bell while you're down there. Get the videos dropped right to your phone. Thanks for spending a little bit of time with me. The link to becoming a VIP is down there in the description, dfsarmy.com. Use that coupon code CHOP, CHOP, trigger that 20% off discount. Jump in here today. Let's start winning. Let's start learning, and let's become better players. Take care, guys. Have a good one.